All right, English teacher friends. So there are so many exciting things happening. I had a number of requests to do a deeper dive into rule number 18 after my Plinko video that I released the other week. And then I'm also coming at the end of my traditional academic year and am going to inherit a whole group of fantastic summer school students. And there are some things about those students that I already know before even meeting them. And any of you with some years or some time beneath your belt will agree with this. I know before I even read their writing that the bulk of them are going to craft sentences that over rely on the short, simple declarative sentence. That when I read their first drafts, I'm going to get a lot of choppy, 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 that droning, rhythmic, robotic quality because they're only manipulating, two or three sentence constructs. So what do we do, to break kids of that pattern and that rhythm in order to be more nuanced writers? So in this video, we're going to take a look at what Strunk and White define as rule number 18. And in that rule, they assert that there are 12 different ways to construct a sentence. So ultimately, I spend a lot of time equipping my students with syntactical choices, as they're crafting sentences, to always have their antennae perking up in terms of how do you achieve the voice, the rhythm, the flow, the pizzazz, the spunk. Of a good quality mature writer. So I'm going to gamify this one for us and use a PowerPoint game called Palacebo or Greasy Pole. It's a game. My understanding comes out of the Philippines and Indonesia, and it's pretty interesting. And my students have a ton of fun playing. This version of voice rhythm flow rule number 18. So let me get right into it. And for those of you that are coming to the party a little late, let me explain what rule number 18 is and where it comes from. So you're looking in this slide at the book cover for Write It Right with Strunk and White. It's a celebration of the elements of style, which was a text that, in the 80s and 90s, growing up in New York State, I was saddled with that and basically had to memorize the rules of grammar, punctuation, and syntax. And so I'm a little old school with certain things. And I equip my students with Write It Right. You can get this book for free online if you just type in Write It Right with Strunk and White PDF. And I just put it right in Google Classroom for my students. And it's one of our staple sort of seminal texts throughout the year. And it's just a comprehensive text to teach students everything they need with regards to mechanics, the basics, nuance, and ultimate mastery of language so that over time, I'm not seeing the endless comma splice that we tend to encounter in draft after draft after draft if we don't teach it correctly. So. In that text, Strunk and White have something they call rule number 18. And ultimately, they diagram for students the idea that there are 12 different ways to construct a single sentence. And here's the example from the text. So they start with an independent clause. Mr. White wrote the essay after carefully planning it, and then they show how to proceed through all the other 11 forms with adverb clauses, adverbs, infinitives, parenthetical statements, etc. So my students know the names of sentence constructs. And that sounds nerdy and sounds geeky, but it helps me out tremendously when I'm having conferences or doing writing workshops. And let's say that, during a whole class writing workshop that we have a student by the name of Jason, and Jason has his introduction, blasted in front of the class, and we're dissecting it and offering feedback and commentary on it. And I want my students to be able to say things like this. Jason, your second, third, and fourth sentence are all short, simple, declarative, independent clauses. Why don't you take sentence 2 and 3 and make it a parenthetical statement? And for Jason to say, oh, yeah, I'm seeing, like I'm paralleling my syntax here and it's yielding this choppy flow. If I combine 2 and 3 into a parenthetical, I'll have better voice rhythm and flow. So just some theory and some technique to help along the way. So the PowerPoint that we're going to take a look at is from this site here, powerpointgames.uk. The gentleman who made this particular PowerPoint is an absolute master with graphics. I love his PowerPoints, and he's got a ton of games, and I use them all the time for my Play-Doh discussions and activities such as this. So you can get it there. It's called Paladizo. Greasy poll, and I'll show you what it looks like at the end of my presentation here, his actual PowerPoint. So here are the rules and the setup for this. So I split the class into 2 teams. Each of the following slides contains statements that completely over-rely upon the short, simple, declarative sentence, so the independent clause. So it's just independent clause, independent clause, independent clause. So short, simple, declarative stacked upon short, simple, declarative. And oftentimes, especially with our struggling and emerging writers, we see them just stack sentence upon sentence upon sentence that way. So the goal is this. Students are going to rewrite each slide while keeping the principles of rule number 18 in mind. So I want them to manipulate their syntax for the purposes of voice, rhythm, and flow. So depending on class size, you can do a variety of things. So I usually say that, during the revisions that, the teams are going to get together and submit the best 3 or 4 out of the group. So let's say team 1 has, like 9 kids in it, and team 2 has 8 kids in it. Gather your heads together and say, all right, Jason, Tim, Wyeth, and Katrina, you guys wrote the best revisions, submit them to Mr. Kuhn for review. So team 1, those 4 kids are going to submit. Team 2, you have four of your best kids submit, and then they submit them to me. I evaluate them, appraise them, and determine point values, which when I get into the actual game slides, you'll see. So that's the thing with this. Don't be super rigid in terms of rules and guidelines and procedural things. I mean, it's you're learning, they're learning. That's the goal here. So always, like with my kids growing up, rules of games changed all the time, and it's kind of the same with how I gamify things in the classroom. So make the rules work for you and your kids, their maturity level, their skill level, etc., and have it make sense. So here's an example of one. So look at how this is written. I love my cat. His name is Cooper. He has 7 toes. He is orange and white. He is cuddly. So ultimately, what we're going to do is have students revise that for the purpose of voice, rhythm, and flow to break that structure, the parallelism of the short, simple, declarative sentence structures stacked upon each other. So manipulate the syntax and wield it a little stronger. And then obviously you're going to get into conversations about when you're manipulating your syntax like that. Clearly, kids need to know how to use commas and colons and semicolons and hyphens, dashes, all of that stuff. So we've talked about that in other videos to make sure they're equipped with those basics. But also it comes down to tier 2 level vocabulary. When you stretch your vocabulary, limit your to be verbs, um, when you know how to manipulate syntactical features, when you can, put all of that together, then, you can play around with the 11 to 12 different sentence constructs. So here's another one. I brush my teeth after every meal. I've never had a cavity, but my gums are receding. My dentist told me to try Sensodyne toothpaste, right? So again, we don't want our students writing like that. So these are very basic narrative pieces. Ultimately, what I do is, let's say we're working on a rhetorical analysis, say in AP language, like I don't know, um, just like an Obama speech or something like that, to actually take student samples of redundancies in the sentence constructs and then have them revise whole class. It's really nice for students to see their work being revised by others. I think it's super helpful. When we engage at that level. So ultimately, for this one, I have I think 10 revisions. So Bob gave a eulogy. It was for his daughter's goldfish. She is 7 years old and sad. His tone was so heartfelt and sincere. He's such a good man. I actually cried as he stood by the toilet saying our goodbyes to the family fish. Right? So just revise, manipulate those sentence constructs. You can change the vocab. You can change the syntactical patterns, obviously, and rock and roll. So let me show you what the actual game slide looks like real quick. So this is what the actual game slide looks like. So as students revise in their teams, you know, again, you can gamify this and create the rules however you want. But in terms of revision, I'm kind of like the Bob Barker or the Alex Trebek. I ultimately assess which revision is the best, which is a really strong revision, and I just award points. And we go on up, and this is, I don't know if you've ever seen Greasy, and you can go at it however you want with regards to that. So Policebo is the name of that. So bouncing between slides here. So yeah, you can make the rules depending on class size. I know, like for my AP classes tend to be a little small on the smaller side. 14, 15, 16 students. In my Regents classes tend to be like 26, 27. So it changes the dynamic of how you gamify things. So I'm always tweaking rules and figuring things out based on class size, maturity, and it's a totally different ball game when you're working with ninth graders versus 12th graders. So be inventive and kind of rock and roll from there. So to wrap things up on this video, just know that I have a few irons in the fire. So I think most of you know that I'll be presenting at the National Council of Teachers of English Conference in the fall in Anaheim with my good friends Tim Freitas and Brandon Abden. So we got a few tricks up our sleeve we'll be presenting. I'm also doing some professional development with the National Writing Project and Perfection Learning. So keep your ears open for that. One of the things that I will be doing shortly, and I'll send an email out and keep the Facebook groups appraised of this, is I'm going to be offering a summer short course series, which is basically just small 60, 90-minute crash courses on things like my Plato's Plato discussion. I've been asked to do a deep dive into that. Alternative grading methods, my Word Study Academy, my Nuance Academy, things like this. And I'll also be doing my Teach It Right 5-week mastermind a few times over the summer, if you're interested. So if you want any information, feel free to email me at teachingwritingcoach@gmail.com. I can also send these slides on to you if you would like. And then my website has some information as well, teachinghowtowrite.com. So hopefully you find this to be useful, and you can get more theoretical and technical at sentence level with your students, and have them write with greater voice, rhythm, flow, pizzazz, and finesse. So take care for now. Happy teaching, happy writing.